Here's a command for you: help your neighbor. That's a good command to follow. We see at the very beginning. Do want to say that as we read this chapter, there are going to be several laws that are going to shake us a little bit, pull us back a hair, and that is because we are dealing with ancient Near Eastern culture. We have to think about that this is an ancient context, and that God is making rules, making directions to protect the innocent. So you really have to put on your ancient Near Eastern mindset when we read through some of these laws. It's also worth reflecting on our own law code and various things that are rules that are made in America. It's helpful to do that because we'll realize that if somebody else is looking at our rules and laws, they may also be confused and say, "Well, why is that the law? Doesn't it seems like you could go further to make that legal or illegal?" For whatever it is, and that's because there are wicked institutions and there are wicked practices. The sinful heart is terribly awful, and so that means when we try to legislate, we try to make laws to wrangle this evil heart of ours. They're just not going to be perfect enough. Even God's law code, as we look at it, is not doesn't go far enough. But of course, it does go far enough when we think about how Jesus summarized it: love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. Yes, the heart of the law takes care of these, but then there's always something when you get to the particular applications, there's something that's just felt and left undone. So let us look at this. The first law, I think, will make a little bit of sense to us. You shall not see your brother's ox or a sheep going astray and ignore them. You shall take them back to your brother. If you see property running around, you see the tractor laying down, if you're talking about an animal or an ox or a sheep that your neighbor uses to get things done, or that he will use for economic gain, then you need to take them back to your brother. Take responsibility for what your brother is doing with those. It says that you shall help him to lift them up again. If you see the ox or the donkey fallen, you need to go help him get it up. This is one of those major sabbatical issues that Jesus faced, because Jesus is going around healing people on the Sabbath, and the religious leaders are getting all bent out of shape and saying, "Why are you doing this good thing?" And he said, "Well, if your neighbor's donkey or ox falls on the Sabbath, don't you go and help him? Don't you pull it up again?" And so that was a way of Jesus pointing out to them that they were so focused on their own interpretations of the law that they were missing the entire heart of the law. This one would kind of out of place here, but you kind of see how this one is going to be connected to the eighth commandment: thou shalt not steal. You're trying to see your neighbor prosper. Number five, verse 5 is going to get us thinking about the seventh commandment: thou shalt not commit adultery. A woman shall not wear a man's garment. There is a distinction between male and female, and this is definitely confusing in our day and time, is it not? Who would have thought that we would have discussions about what makes a woman and what makes a man? But these kind of law codes were still in in force in the ancient Near East, and saying that, hey, a woman needs to dress like a woman, a man needs to dress like a man. We should be able to tell the difference between a male and a female is the essential principle that you would get. And of course, this is connected to adultery, because the division of the sexes, the understanding that there's a difference between the two genders, obviously has implications for sexual ethics and adultery in particular. We see this one talking about in verse 6, connected to this whole idea, thou shalt not kill, because this one we are told that if you see a bird's nest, you can take the young, but you cannot take the mother with the young. And oftentimes in these law codes, we see this great protection of the source of life. So yes, you can eat the little ones, the babies, but leave the mother. Protect the mother. You would be sinning if you take the mother and the young, the object or the creature that is able to reproduce, leave it. You shall let the mother go, but the young you may take for yourself, that it may go well with you. Verse 8, we're talked about that when you build a build a house and you've got a roof and you're going to hang out up there and you got a balcony, make sure you put some sort of railing to make sure nobody falls off. Again, trying to protect the life of others by being proactive. So, how can you be proactive to make sure that you are preserving life and causing human flourishing to happen to your neighbors? You shall not sow the vineyard with two kinds of seeds. So, you can't put beans and corn in the same field. There must be a distinction. So, this is going back to this whole idea. Now, this may seem odd in our theological smart people really kind of go this way or that way with this one. But when I'm looking at 9, 10, and 11, I'm thinking about that this is applying to that sixth commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. This is talking about the relationship between a husband and a wife. So I'll talk about, let's go to the ox and the donkey first, because you probably remember that especially if you've been around the church for a long, long time, you've heard this phrase when we're talking about getting married. You talk about don't be unequally yoked. Don't be don't get on, don't yoke up with a donkey if you're an ox. So the whole idea is that Christians should marry Christians. The Apostle Paul uses that terminology. I think personally he's pulling that from here, because elsewhere he uses these kind of odd laws that we would consider odd anyway, and is using them in his own argumentation. So he's saying, hey, when you're getting married, don't marry a non-Christian if you're a Christian, because you don't need to be unequally yoked. Right here, you shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. So when we get married, we want to be plowing with a Christian if we're a Christian. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to plow very well. So imagine an ox and a donkey working together. It's not going to work out too well. And the same thing up here with the two kinds of seed. You are, if it's a mixed seed, you're going to have half of this crop, half of that crop. You need to be together in a marriage. Adultery ultimately would come about because there's some sort of dissatisfaction and not valuing of the spouse. There needs to be unity. There doesn't need to be division within the field, if you will. There doesn't need to be a division within the husband lady relationship. I'm sure you don't feel like you were getting that from talking about mixtures of seeds, ox and a donkey, and then we can take it the same way. Cloth of wool and linen mixed together. No more 50% cotton and 50% polyester. If you were an Israelite, you had to have 100%. Again, showing the unity of what I think we would be talking about, the marriage, because this is in the context of this expositing the seventh commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. But as we've seen in this little section, we've kind of been bouncing around a little bit too. So as you can imagine, people think different things, but at least we've thought about it for a little bit. Verse 12 says, you shall not make, or you shall make yourself tassels on the four corners of your garment. We know elsewhere that these tassels on the garment are to remind the Israelites of the law. Just remember God's law and how important it is. Now, a clear exposition of the seventh commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery, is laws concerning sexual immorality. This is one that's probably going to bother you. It bothered me, as we read that. We have to think through that ancient Near Eastern context and think through how the Lord is protecting innocent people and working within institutions that have just gone awry. And we know for sure that when marriage goes awry, when the marriage is not thriving, there's all kinds of dangers and things can happen. So this instance that they're talking about in verse 13 says, if any man takes a wife and goes into her and then hates her. Well, there's the problem. He married a lady, and then rather than choosing to value her, choosing to love her, for whatever reason, he hates her. He has turned against her. And he turns against her so bad that he accuses her of misconduct and brings a bad name upon her. And he ends up saying that she wasn't a virgin when we got married. She was promiscuous before we got married. He ends up saying that. And then we have this long, elaborate situation that happens, is that then the father, if the husband is saying this, and the father brings proof of the lady's virginity and say, no, I got the cloak that you gave me on your wedding night. Here, this is the blanket. And he shows it before the elders and says, no, see, I'm proving that she was indeed a virgin. She was indeed there was, here you see verse 17, there was evidence of her virginity. And then if that happens, notice what it says in verse 18. This is probably what bothers you, because if she really was not a virgin, she ends up being killed, stoned. And but if he is incorrect, what happens to him? Verse 18, then the elders of that city shall take the man and whip him, and they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought a bad name upon a virgin of Israel, and she shall be his wife. He may not divorce her all of his days. And I think initially we're saying, hey, the young lady we see right here, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of her father's house, and the men of the city shall stone her to death. We're thinking this is not even right. This is not correct. Why would she be stoned if she committed adultery before they were married and was promiscuous? Uh, why would that happen? Then if he's bringing a bad name, why would he just be stoned? Well, of course, one, he was not actually committing a sexual act. So we have to do remember that we have to elevate what God elevates. Sex is a very important thing, a very important act. It's the very act of recreation and procreation. It's very important, and so we don't need to devalue something God values, of course. Second of all, we do have to remember that if he was killed, what would happen to this lady in the ancient Near Eastern culture? And so, what this is a way of doing is actually protecting her. Again, it's we would say, hey, she should go her own way and kind of say, "Sayonara, buddy. We'll see you later. You've been mean to me. I'm gonna be mean to you." What makes would in this could happen right in this day and age, but back then she would be in there would be extra work that would have to be put back on her own father. She wouldn't be able to necessarily support herself, and then other people. Um, she may not actually have another husband in that day and age because of what happened. So this was a way to actually protect her and to make him, hopefully, that husband actually learn to value her. He's been whipped, and actually the people of the area would not even trust him because of what he went through. Um, so hopefully that kind of gives a little bit of a flavor of that ancient Near East context, that ancient situation. Then we see just flat out, if a man is found lying with the wife of another man, if they are committing adultery, then they shall both die, both of them. If there is a betrothed virgin and a man meets her in the street, lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate. You shall stone them to death. The young woman, because she did not cry for help, though she was in the city. So she yells for help. She has the opportunity to yell for help, and if she does that, then she is, of course, spared, and the man is experiences the death penalty, is stoned. We see that. For this case is like that of a man attacking and murdering his neighbor. Realize that the Bible, right, in the ancient context, when we talk about thou shalt not commit adultery, that this aspect of rape is akin to murdering. That's the level that God takes it. And we should have that same attitude toward this as well, and value that sacred act that God has given us. If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed, sees her and lies with her, again, rape is happening, then the man who lay with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has violated her. He may not divorce her all of his days. Here's again that odd situation here, that you would imagine he would be that he would be killed, but in or be suffer the death penalty. But in this situation, what happens? He is actually he has got to marry her, and then he's not even allowed to divorce her. And again, I think that's going back to that same situation of protecting the lady because she had been raped. Again, the attitude of men in that day, she may never have protection at all, and so the whole idea is that maybe this man would actually learn to love and take care of her. And actually, the community then would be making sure that happens. Again, we're talking about ancient Near Eastern context, and it's also helpful for us to remember too is that when we look at the law, the framework that I give us, that we receive from the reformers, that we've received from the Puritans and others, is that the framework of saying that there is the moral law, there's the ceremonial law, and there is the judicial law. All of these law codes that we've been looking at are the judicial law, which would not, it was done away with Christ. When we read these, we can find various principles that we can act, but you've really got to do some hard thinking and say, like, how does this make sense in the ancient Near Eastern culture? And then what are some principles that we can pull over here to inform some of our own laws that we make in this, in our current day and age? But we would not wholesale pull over judicial laws that Israel did in the ancient times and pull it over here. That would be incorrect. But when we look at the 10 Commandments, that we would say is the moral law, that those are enforceable, those are understandable, and things that we should really use to guide us in making our own laws. But then we need to always remember, as we've been looking at and emphasizing on Sunday morning, that we are not sanctified by the law. The law was never meant to sanctify you. The only thing the law does is realize that you are evil, wicked, and that you need a savior. And I think that's something else. If we look at these applications of the law, that we realize just how twisted the human heart is in the wicked institutions that are put out there. So this was a longer video, and I feel like I could have taken an hour to really think through each of these. But I hope that's been somewhat helpful to you, and I will see you in the next video.